I'm just going to be talking today primarily as a practitioner. I am currently undertaking research. Lorraine is my supervisor in UAL, and I teach at the Royal College of Art, and I run a design studio. So the topic today that I'm going to kind of explore through my work, I'm not really going to talk about ethics. Hopefully you guys will draw out the ethical threads of my work and those of others, is going to be around the idea of estrangement as a kind of critical tool to engage participants. So this is the model, the kind of let's say what I understand to be the foundational model of collaborative design, the idea of the designer entering realities and lived experiences other than their own and designing for and with them. And there is a kind of there's an immersion, there is a contamination of the designer with the subject's realities, and then there is a dialogue, and then there are many processes in between. I'm simplifying it, but I guess what I'm trying to do here is to kind of problematize over familiarity within the subject's domain. The idea that subjects, participants are. We need to consider the degree of maybe impossibility or difficulty in articulating something over familiar. So that brings the idea of estrangement into play, the idea of being or devising tools or methods to extract the subject from their reality momentarily, and to kind of heighten the critical, let's say, facilities or faculties of the subject in order to kind of further understand the kind of tacit knowledge that we value so much within co-design. So it's this kind of idea of, distanciating the subject through estrangement. And I'm going to show 3 projects very quickly which aim to do that somehow, whether it's in the design phase, in the mapping, in the research, and so on. So I think what I'm trying to get to is to get to ideas over opinion. I think what's interesting, the idea of consultation often ends up in opinions, something Deleuze identifies as a failure to think, and a sense of inertia and a lack of creativity. So whereas ideas may be more relational, more complex, and less automated, less habituated. Okay, so first project is something that's currently happening with Bristol Council, local high school, local primary school, and an initiative called Eastern Safer Streets. It is the pedestrianisation of a piece of road that has been earmarked by the Parents and Teachers Association due to safety issues and lack of walking as well in the neighbourhood, trying to kind of increase the well-being of residents. It's kind of plan view, the space as it currently is. And what I wanted to really do in this project was to prototype and to momentarily kind of look into the future through a series of events that can then further let's say, inform the design process, where the people involved would be parents, teachers, members of the council. The first aspect, or the first part of the project, was to really very openly look at the possibilities of what could happen there, a series of workshops with children. What's interesting about working with children is the kind of unhabituated process. They go straight to ideas, less to opinions. They will go straight into things like this. A place you can kind of read through it. This one's very interesting. It's a disco, the big iPad permanently installed on the ground, and a massive Coca-Cola sign, and a mosque actually on the other side. And third idea being with a pizza shop. And we very literally translated this pizza shop, and we created a kind of a pizza restaurant where the oven was made, banners were created, no parking, LOL, the idea being we're pedestrianising permanently. And an event was held where, we kind of, there was twofold kind of effect on this. It was We could prototype and look at the space, how it would be occupied for the first time with people, looking at scale, kind of affordances on a very physical level, but also the kind of social elements that we could create and imagine further. And also this acted as a space to further kind of consult and talk about the project and understand the kind of wider public opinion about it, and also ideas. Something like this. Looks like that. That's me. It's flipping a quick pizza. For some of the very early, let's say, visualizations, a number of playful elements have come out of it. A stage which doubles up as a bench. The project's kind of called Odd Bollards. The bollards are something that architects kind of plonk into place after the project. We played with them a little bit. That's also a generalization, but we played with them. Each bollard in this project is different. We have about 60 different bollards, both sides of the thing. As an interactive light, which you can press like a pedestrian crossing, which will change the intensity over the stage, and so on. So a bunch of ideas that came out of dialogue. Also, Bristol is a very good kind of area to work with. They're very open. I'm not sure if something like this could happen in London. A second project is a project about mapping a very complex informal market in Goa, and this was done with two local organizations in India, and it was funded by the HRC. And my role was to devise a method of mapping, or come up with a method of mapping in collaboration with my local partners of a very informal, complex space. This is maybe 1/10 of the market. I can further talk about the reasons behind the mapping, but for now I'll just talk about the process a little bit. Ground level, it looks like this. It's open 7 days, and it's the source of cultural production to a high degree. It's a very important social space. It keeps a food culture and making culture intact as well in the region. So, and it's currently under threat because of the foreign direct investment that's coming in through Walmart and stuff. So we want to understand the importance of this place. And to do that, I went around, had 2 weeks to do this project, and collected deformed aubergines as a kind of humorous universal starting point to kind of create conversation. And I coined a name with my partners called the Nakwangi, which is local, in the local Konkani language means nose aubergine, and began to kind of collect these, and to then we created a very cheap campaign around the market where we started advertising or try to make a kind of further kind of understanding of what this thing is and slight amount of ambiguity. And then we began to use this as a method of talking to the stall owners and begin to understand spatial politics, things around resources, infrastructure. We understood a certain degree of ideas around mythologies of the market, and very kind of deep, let's say, qualitative responses, which were then mapped onto the bigger project. And a final project that I'd just like to talk about, I'm probably going through this very fast, is a project that was done with the Museum of Childhood, Victoria and Albert Museum, which is called Hello Stranger. I was invited as a resident to create a, let's say, project. I soon understood that the museum is going through a 6-year or 7-year redevelopment, a redesign, and I really wanted to understand how I could create a tool to inform the bigger design process, which would not involve me, which would involve architects which were not appointed at the time, and so on. So the project had two outcomes. One is an internal document, which is to the right, and the kit, which was a set of cards. So I can tell you a little bit more. Over 2 months, I collected images and had a lot of conversations with members of staff, ranging from the director to estates, catering, cleaning, and so on. and pulled out certain themes and coupled those up rather randomly with images. Very kind of standard, everyday images that I would imagine members of the staff would kind of, scenes that they would encounter on a daily basis. So then I asked the staff to pick a card, any card. I had 35 participants to live with that card, think about that image, think about that thing for 2 weeks, and just submit a question. It'll be anonymous. There'll be a Dropbox, physical Dropbox. You put your question in there, and then we'll publish the questions. We'll make the questions public, and they will all remain anonymous. And we had a lot of interesting questions, things that became rather valuable. It's always good to know what people don't know, what people want, what people, different ideas of information, I guess. They varied from, some were quite sad, like this one. Why don't we talk to each other? This was a response to a card which looked like that. This is more relational between institutions. South Kensington having all the glory and Bethnal Green getting the dregs, basically. Much more kind of, I guess, logistical or basic kind of infrastructural things. Some very interesting ideas came out, and so on. So that's my last slide. There are 3 different approaches that involve different people in different contexts, different countries, and I hope they will inspire you to pull out some very difficult questions around ethics. Thank you very much.